What's up, BookTube? My name is Buck. This is Buck's Books, and today, the Buck's Books we're going to talk about is a book called Mythago Woods, which sucked. Let me give you a little bit backstory on this. So I went to Reddit, first mistake, to try to find books and to read that had a very specific theme. The theme I was looking for was medieval eco-horror, right? Very straightforward. Medieval eco-horror. What I want is some guy with a knight and a code that he can't possibly live up to, and that crushes him with guilt all the time. And I want him to be in a spooky swamp thing forest. You know, I want the swamp, and I want it to be malicious. And I want there to be killings. There has to be a horror element in the form of gratuitous violence. Doesn't need to be splatterpunk, doesn't need to be gore, couldn't hurt, just needed to be ominous. Right? Very straightforward. You'd think this could be accomplished. This actually was accomplished, but not by this book. This was the first book that was recommended to me. So I think that this will check all of your boxes, right? So our protagonist is a spineless British who goes to visit his brother in the woods, only to find that his brother is now going camping a lot. And that is following in the footsteps of his father, who was also going camping a lot, but his father was studying the haunted woods, right? And the father, it's unclear as to what the father was studying in the woods, but he ultimately decided that Jungian archetypes could be magically animated by a particularly haunted section of the woods. And so he used this haunted section of the woods to manifest a feral redhead miner that he attempted to groom until she led him to disappear into the haunted woods. So the brother, learning from the mistakes of his father, attempts to do the exact same thing, but in the process, kills her and buries her in the shed. So our protagonist, spineless British, that I had previously mentioned, discovers the body in the shed, and he goes to his brother and he says, "Dude, what are you doing?" And the guy says, "You wouldn't understand. I'm so in love with her that I needed a do-over." So the brother has decided to use the magic of the haunted woods to animate another version of the same feral red-headed miner in order for him to groom, since the previous one was based around his father's subconscious understanding of an ideal woman, right? We're like 30 pages in. Alright? It gets worse from here. The brother winds up wandering further and further into the haunted woods, functionally becoming Craven the Hunter in an effort to locate the part of the woods that would most swiftly facilitate the generation of this teenager that he is trying to groom. And in the process, he is destroying everything he comes across. So, that leaves our protagonist, the spineless Stephen Huxley, in the shed that his brother and father had been living in, and are both now functionally dead because they left to go to the haunted woods. And his initial approach was to wander around the perimeter of the haunted woods, yelling his brother's name, and that didn't do anything, obviously, except expose him to Robin Hood. Robin Hood was there a couple times, and Robin Hood took a couple of pot shots at him. Oh, yeah, that Robin Hood. So, one of the functions of the Mythago Woods is to manifest Mythagos and just kind of send them scrabbling around. And all of these Mythagos happen to be local legends, which in this part of England consist of things like Robin Hood, or nameless knights, or things called Jack in the Greens, which I'm far too American to not only know what that is, but also to learn what that is. That's not going to happen. So in the course of the spineless Stephen Huxley wandering this close to the haunted woods, his own Mythago is generated, and guess what kind? It's not just Robin Hood, but also the same feral redhead miner, which he then proceeds to groom. So after that, the book just kind of devolves into Holstock. That's the writer, Robert Holstock. It devolves into Holstock's smelly wild woman fetish fiction. Like, I believe the point of this was to illustrate the purity and totality of their love, but like, it didn't land. Maybe I was like biased against it by this point. Maybe there was just no saving it for me already. But like, aside from him just like mooning after his child bride here that he 3D printed from his own subconscious, nothing really happened except like a couple of Robin Hoods took pot shots at him with arrows. So our hero, Huxley, decides that he wants to do a flyover of the haunted section of the woods and enlist a nearby biplane pilot, right, to help him accomplish that. Good dude's got burns on his face. So the pilot attempts to fly over the haunted woods, fails. The haunted woods are too big and his equipment malfunctions. The steering column isn't responding and he has to crash, and also he has PTSD from the last time he ran across haunted woods, which were in France. In the midst of all this, there's this giant anthropomorphic boar creature just scrabbling around, and he doesn't do a whole lot aside from, I hesitate to say drive the narrative, but he was intended to drive the narrative, and they keep calling him the Erskimug, and I don't know why. He represented some sort of prototypical early man legend, like you'd find in a cave painting, but it's impossible to tell for sure what it was supposed to be because everyone was just babbling incessantly and the writing isn't very good. So, at this point, Stephen's brother, Christian, the one he was yelling for in the woods, he returns, but now he's huge and he's also feral because he's been living in the time-dilated woods for 20 years. And he successfully abducts the red-headed teenager that his brother had fallen madly in love with now, which is sort of a family tradition among the Huxleys. And Stephen realizes he must grow a spine and go after his brother into the haunted woods and save his inamorata. So he enlists his burned friend for help, and I guess his burned pilot friend just has nothing else going on because he's like, oh, okay. And then they stock up their bags and they backpack into the incredibly haunted woods. And in the course of going through the woods, they see some cavemen and boats and Vikings. I don't know. I don't know why. I don't understand where any of this is coming from. I feel like they could have done more with it. None of my business. So eventually, they get deep enough into the woods that they run across the brother again, who now goes by the Outsider. But it's in like Welsh, like the word for outsider that they use is in a language that doesn't even look like a language to me. So definitely like Gaelic. Stephen has a climactic sword fight with his brother, despite never having used a sword ever, because he is growing into the myth of the kinsman who slays the outsider. So these mythical beings within the woods are themselves capable of generating other myths, which the real human, quote unquote, who's coming from outside the woods, is susceptible to, right? And that makes him better, because all of these mythical figures could not imagine forming a legend of someone who was worse than Stephen Huxley was. So it makes him a better sword fighter, but ultimately not good enough to actually oppose the outsider. So then there's this big dramatic thing, and there's a portal, there's a dirt portal, and the brother says, if I go through the dirt portal, then I will be fully healed and young again, and all this time wouldn't have been wasted, and I can live again. And the Stephen Huxley's like, yes, you must do that. He's like, here, take take this ninja star they gave me for luck. And it hits his brother and kills his brother into the portal. And then he's like, what have I done? No! But then he finds out it's too late, because not only did his brother successfully kidnap his paleo child bride, but she's dead. She was stabbed. He already killed the feral teen that Stephen was grooming. So naturally, Stephen Oh, speaking of Pharaoh, hey, buddy. So, naturally, Stephen is heartbroken, and he keens to the heavens, about the unfairness of it all. And then the Urskamug just shows up. And, I'm having a hard time not picturing the Urskamug as Wizpig from Diddy Kong Racing. Because he is described as, this 40-foot tall pig man. And that's literally the character design for Wizpig. So Wizpig rolls in and reveals that he was Stephen's father all along. Stephen's father became Wizpig in the same way that Stephen's brother became the outsider, and Stephen became the kinsman destined to kill the outsider. Wow! And then Stephen throws dirt into the dirt portal, and his father, Wizpig, heads through the dirt portal holding the dead body of the third iteration of the girl that he also preyed on, and promising his son that one day the story cycle will renew and she will be returned to him. And that's where this piece of crap ends. Alright? So, needless to say, it was spectacularly bad. I've seen a lot of criticism about the hypermasculinity of the text. But I don't think it's fair to blame masculinity for what insecurity did. None of the characters struck me as excessively masculine. Every action Stephen took in the book was embarrassing. It was hand-waved away by implying that they were in the thrall of the Mythago Woods, and that the natural arcane forces overcame their better judgment and compelled them to behave in this way. And even if that were the case, that also makes it difficult to care about the characters because they're on rails. There's no natural character development, and there's no emotional component with which you can connect because they're robots. Robots programmed to be horrible. Just how are you supposed to be able to relate with just an entire family of callow, egotistical sex predators? It's not clicking for me. So, we have to put some of this on the writer. Obviously. He didn't write the characters to be despised by the reader. There are some authors who do that. Mary Shelley did it in Frankenstein. Victor Frankenstein, we know that he's the monster, but not only is he the monster, he sucks. If I had that Tyler Durden Fight Club choice where I could fight anyone, living or dead, the fictional or non, it would, Nathaniel Hawthorne would figure heavily, but I would love to just beat Victor Frankenstein unconscious. That would be great for me. That's not what Robert Holstock intended to do. He wanted you to relate to his horrible characters. Much of the book was this Pygmalion fantasy about isolating a 16-year-old girl who literally sprang full-formed like Athena from the foreheads of these men who dreamed her up. And then he proceeds to keep describing her in blistering and repetitive detail as erotically smelly and hairy. The book had so many opportunities to explore Jungianism and actual mythopoetic thought. So I was thinking, when it started, oh, great, he's going to put a Grendel in there. There's that St. George and the Dragon. It doesn't get more English than that. His name is St. George. Or, any dragon. Just throw in any dragon. That's very British. He didn't do it. Robin Hood. Robin Hood was what he stuck with. It's just silly and bad. I think what I'm saltiest about, aside from the hours I'll never get back, is the specific recommendation that I got when I asked. Because a couple of Lancelot cameos does not make this book medieval. Having woods in it does not make it eco, because that refers to the entirety of an ecosystem that is usually lashing out against human intrusion. And the only horror is that this book won an award. Absolute trash. Do not read it. Now you don't have to read it, because I read it, and I warned you. So, Take my advice. Stay out of the woods. Thanks for tuning in. I will see you next time. Take care.